Good afternoon, gentlemen. Thank you for giving me a few moments to share my thoughts on how we might, as a representative of 222 Collective, the board members, how we might become a better reflection of our mission. As we learned in the recently concluded assessment of the organization, the 222 Collective board is woefully understaffed to meet or to accomplish the mission that God's given us. And we are completely deficient in the diversity that we need to better serve our partners, their missions, and their mission fields. As we consider this opportunity that we have associated with adding new members to our board, it's important that we do that in relationship or in regard for our mission. First of all, our mission is to foster unity in the body of Christ. We cannot expect to foster unity with integrity to our partners in the community around us if we're not fostering that unity amongst ourselves, those of us on the board. Furthermore, as we attempt to serve the body of Christ, it's important that we understand those that we're trying to serve, our partners, and those that they're trying to serve, their mission fields, their communities. If we desire, as 222 Collective, to obtain the vision that God has given us for a thriving community of fellowships and ministries, advancing the kingdom together, we must become more active members of that community. The National Council of Nonprofits asserts that boards of directors are not only responsible to the legal and fiduciary matters that most boards pay most of their attention to, but that boards are also responsible to be inclusive, diversive, participatory, and to be consensus generating. They go on to encourage that board members can significantly impact a board's culture, strategic focus, and its effectiveness. 222 Collective has been in existence for almost 2 years now, and several of our partners have been with us since the beginning. Over that time, God has worked with us and them to affirm the vision and the mission that He's given 222 Collective. With this stable foundation, it's time for us to focus on growing spiritually by enlarging the leadership team to become more productive and efficient. Adding representatives from each of the 222 Collective partner ministries will create some great advantages, both in the short term and the long term, for 222 Collective. One of the things we need to recognize is that we cannot continue growing in isolation from them. For the next few minutes, I hope to persuade you that changing our member recruitment policy will add significant advantage with very little risk. So let's begin by looking at the advantages of this change. First and foremost is this matter of diversity, and us, the board representing, reflecting the ministry partners that God is sending to us and the community around us. This matter of diversity really is a matter of integrity. We cannot assume to promote unity if we do not have unity and diversity in the board. Our vision, of course, extends beyond Douglas County, but it begins here. The vision and the mission of 222 Collective begins here. We must recognize and respond to the changing demographics of Douglas County. And as we know from just looking in our community, the racial demographic of Douglas County has changed significantly over the last 10 years. In the governance gap, Brennan and Forbes cite a Koya Leadership Partner study of not-for-profit ministries, and what they discovered was that these ministries in their study were very positive about diversity and creating diversity in their organization. The problem is that their walk didn't match their talk. They were woefully short of pursuing diversity at the board of director level. We at Tutu Collective must not continue to be one of these ministries. In our context, Tutu Collective, on our campus, in our community, in Douglas County, in our context, the unity we promote requires diversity. And what is interesting, God has seen this and has brought that opportunity for diversity to our campus. The diversity that we might have in the board of directors exists already on the campus. Now, in addition to the advantages of integrity and diversity, we have two areas of productivity that adding to the board will help to address. The first one of those relates to capacity and capability. As we know all too well, the board is suffering with a number of functional deficiencies. I've listed a few of them here: marketing and communication, fundraising, finance, and the rest. Adding to the board of directors from the partners that God has provided to us will help us to address these deficiencies. It'll also open up additional avenues for volunteer recruitment. Serving the body of Christ, this is the second part of the productivity advantage. Serving the body of Christ requires that we gain in understanding and learning of those that we're trying to serve. As Mitzberg asserts, wise investment requires a learning strategy based on understanding of the front lines of ministry and being flexible and responsive to the changes in culture that those individuals meet on a day-to-day basis. In its current state, the board of directors of Tutu Collective is very much disconnected from the front line of ministries that our partners are engaged in. Adding ministry partner representation will help bridge that gap and communicate our commitment to their success. Finally, there is the advantage of visibility. At this point, Tutu Collective is seen by most of the members of our partners as nothing more than a tenant. Adding a representative from their organization will increase visibility of our mission and our vision into their organizations, and it will enhance connectedness between us and them, and it will improve communication. Now, that's not only true into those organizations, but through those organizations into the community. And as we know, expanded visibility, communication, and connectedness will help grow our donor base, therefore giving us further advantage in the area of fundraising. Now, of course, introducing change always raises the potential for risk, and there is a potential risk here that we have discussed in the past, and that's the risk of us losing as a board the broader vision and mission of Tutu Collective. But there are a couple of ways that we can mitigate that risk. The first way that we would mitigate that risk is by enhancing the bylaws, our operating principles, and by introducing a decision-making process. Secondly, we can mitigate the risk by doing what we've always done, and that is through careful selection, vetting, and education of our board members. Beyond this risk, there really is only one other cost associated with this change, and that is the cost of time. There is no financial cost. So we have a cost of time and energy. Obviously, we'll need to invest in changing the bylaws, operating principles, and creating and instituting the decision-making process. We'll also have to locate and vet candidates for the board. Beyond this, and the education, and the education of these candidates, there is no additional cost. So the only remaining consideration is the timeline. So let's take a look at that briefly. Initially, of course, we'll need to change and create the bylaws, operating principles, and decision process. I intend to invest the next month and a half in that step of the process. I should have something available for the board to review by the middle of January, roughly 30 days from now. Once we have that, we can approach our partners with the vision of 2-2 Collective beyond what we have communicated to this point. That will help reaffirm to them that we are about them and about their success as well as our own, and of course to propose this change to them, the effect that will have on them, which they will of course should receive very positively. And then lastly, we'll need to vet and elect new board members to 2-2 Collective. So in summary, we have a number of significant advantages that this change provides. First, we have integrity, that being who we are, being who we say we are. Being who we say we are. Secondly, there's diversity, giving voice to our demographic. Then third, there are the two advantages associated with productivity, creating capacity and capability through added resources, and then the understanding and the learning that they bring to the table as a part of the board. We have the advantage of visibility, improving communication and connectedness with our partners and with the surrounding community. And then lastly, we have the fundraising advantage by increasing our donor base. Ultimately, and all of this, of course, is at very low risk and expense. Ultimately, this is about faithful stewardship and trust. Two verses for us to consider. 1 Corinthians 4:1 and 2 says that it is required in stewards that one be found faithful. This is about us being faithful, the board of directors of 2-2 Collective being faithful to the resources, to the partners that God has brought into our sphere of influence. Secondly, y'all know this is one of my favorite verses. We must commit our way to the Lord, trust also in Him, and He shall bring it to pass. That it, of course, is the vision of 2-2 Collective.